The Eye concludes the second episodic arc of the season, and out of every episode so far, I must say that this is easily the most impressive visual episode. It's probably a bit unfair to say that, given the story of the episode, but The Eye was absolutely stunning to watch. It had been talked up by the characters in the previous episodes, but it was nothing like seeing it firsthand. Even the glimpses that we got from the trailers never showed the massive scale of the phenomenon. The occasional meteor beforehand gave us a tease of what was to come, but I was amazed at how well it actually looked. The colors of the sky were beautiful, and it only got better. I would have liked the slightly longer scene where the eye first begins, just to really take it all in, because the shot of the colorful sky and meteors shooting across the sky with the Imperial base powerless on the ground was one of the best shots we've ever seen since The Last Jedi. Whenever we got another look at the sky for the rest of the episode, I was constantly focused on the eye rather than whatever was taking place. Jumping back to the beginning of the episode, it begins with a great conversation between Cassian and Nemik about mercenaries and fighting back against the Empire. And while I was already assuming that Nemik would be one of the casualties during the mission, Cassian's line about sleeping when this is all over only cemented that idea. I was glad, though, with how they killed him off. He wasn't necessarily a soldier like the rest of them, so him being shot wouldn't have meant as much as him getting the more peaceful death that an idealist like him deserves. The conversation between the two characters also let us get inside their minds even more. Nemik is a very thoughtful person who takes the time to think about mercenaries and what their fight means for the freedom against the Empire. And Cassian continues to be a hard-nosed person who chooses not to believe in the cause because of how small they are, similar to Jyn Erso in a way when we first meet her in Rogue One. She knows the Empire is evil, but it's hard to believe that one small person can make a difference. So they choose to just live under its rule in the best way possible without having to catch their attention. It isn't until both characters find a group of people just like them they start to believe that they can create change. We got to see much more of both the Imperials and native Aldhanis in this episode, and I honestly didn't care for either. There weren't really any new aspects of the Empire explored, other than maybe their decent treatment for the natives for the time being, or the inner workings of their ranks, but it didn't interest me like I had hoped. And even though getting to see the natives and their culture finally on screen was neat, I think they could have used one or two less scenes, especially during their ritual. The constant cutting between the action and their ritual kept taking me out of the moment, and because we never have seen them before, their ritual had relatively no meaning or impact to me. It only broke up the tension and pacing created by the heist. Something I did find interesting was how hesitant Vel was to commit to the mission. Obviously there's a risk alive, and no turning back once you begin, but it feels like there was more to her than we haven't found out yet. Her group is made up of random people made to serve a purpose, and even if she had developed some close bonds with them, she seemed almost scared to commit to the mission. It could have just been nerves, but something also may have happened in the past that has filled her with doubt whenever she chooses to fight back. She had put on this strong and capable mask of a leader, but in the end, she had her own doubts just like everyone else did. The heist finally begins, and it seems like the third episode of every arc is going to be action-packed, with the first two focus on setting up the story and fleshing out the characters. It's an unusual model, but I can't complain when it keeps resulting in amazing sequences like this. The tension was palpable throughout it all. When Cinta and Vel first rejoined the group and a blast was fired, killing the Imperial, it actually made me jump because of how sudden it was and how focused I was on the episode. We all knew someone was going to die, and even though we had our guesses, it still felt like anyone could die at any given moment, which is kind of what ends up happening. The process of loading the hauler with credits is interrupted when the comm officer intercepts their communication and leads the squad down to the vault, leading to a shootout. Everything from the acting to the music to the pacing made the scene what it was. I had never grown particularly attached to many of the characters, but I was constantly worried that some Imperial was going to say screw it and start revolting while loading the credits. Everything set in the vault, but also basically just the entire episode, looked amazing. While the volume could have been used for a sequence like this, it wouldn't have given off the same realness of having everyone scattered around, frantically loading the hauler like their life depended on it. The only shot that slightly took me out of it was when they cut to the TIE fighter pilots. Them getting into the fighters themselves was a great shot, with the black silhouette in front of the greenish blue sky, but when they finally got into the cockpit, it felt almost too real. I'm not quite sure if it was the costume, the angle, or the lighting, but I wasn't a fan of that specifically. However, like I said before, nearly everything else looked amazing. When the shooting finally started happening, I really began to love the episode. It was led up to very well, with Kimsey questioning what was going on, and him refusing to follow Gorn's orders as the music ramped up along with the stakes. I was definitely not expecting Gorn to be the first to die, even though it does make sense, but I'm glad that they didn't spend too much time trying to make any death too emotional. They understand that we've only known these characters for 3 episodes, and they're meant to be supporting characters to Cassian's journey, so while certain fans may grow attached to specific members of the group, I feel like the overall fanbase wasn't tearing up after anyone was shot. Terriman gets shot down before the rest of the group is able to escape, and something that really surprised me was that they just left Cinta behind. It never even crossed my mind until it was about to happen, but I questioned how they were going to pick her up before leaving, and it turns out they just never did. I doubt we'll see her story continued in the near future, but she may show up in another episode as a friendly face. Until then, it looks like she'll either be undercover in the Empire, or possibly returning back with the Aldhanis to their native land. I must also say that I audibly gasped when Nemik got crushed by the credits as the hauler took off. I thought that he had made it out alive, only for him to get immediately thrown back and die from something completely accidental. His death had the biggest impact for me, only because it's shown how important of a person he is to the others. They immediately rush to help him, and even delay their escape to try and save his life. I've already said it multiple times, but once again I have to express my awe of the Eye. The flight and subsequent pursuit through the meteors was visually entertaining beyond belief. The sky was so vibrant, and yet I could still feel the tension of not only Nemik's looming fate, but the hauler as a whole as it was being shot by TIE fighters and battered by the debris. This side of the story is wrapped up as the surviving members of the group arrive on a nearby planet to seek the help of a doctor to save Nemik's life, who sadly doesn't make it. While that is happening, Skeen attempts to convince Cassian to abandon Nemik and Vel and take the money for themselves. I didn't expect Cassian to go along with it, but him shooting Skeen completely shocked me, getting yet another audible gasp from me. It was so sudden that I didn't even have time to comprehend it before thinking about the ramifications. I was hoping that he would at least go with Vel and meet back up with Luthen, but he reverts back to where we were first introduced to him in the series, someone unwilling to be a part of a larger rebel effort. He takes his money and the doctor's ship and goes out on his own again, taking with him Nemik's manifesto. Hopefully he heads back to Ferrix, just because I want to see those characters again, but now that there's an Imperial presence there, it could be more interesting than before. I also hope that he reads through the manifesto, or at least someone does, because it would be a nice connection for something that he wrote to become a major ideology of the rebellion later on. We then jump to Coruscant for the first time in this episode, as we see the ISB as they react to the news of this rebel heist. Even though Dedra and Cyril are key characters, I didn't miss them at all in this episode. I liked taking the time to focus on Cassian and have the major action sequences for the arc. Mon Mothma, on the other hand, is always missed. Her scene was relatively small, but we see her speaking in the Imperial Senate about a proposal of hers, and while short, the scene shows not only what the Imperial Senate is like, but also the fact that she isn't the most beloved when it comes to her morality and compassion, something many of the other senators lack. The other senators are seen talking amongst each other, and even leaving amidst her speech. It's unclear what exactly the focus of this next episode will be, but hopefully this Coruscant stories have a larger presence in the episode, specifically Mon Mothma. I assumed that she would be a co-lead, along with Cassian, but so far she's had very little to do in these first 6 episodes. The episode then ends with just a quick scene of Luthen Rail's shop, in which he learns of the rebel victory on Aldhani, and does a small celebration in the back room. The Eye wraps up the Aldhani arc with stunning cinematography and action full of tension and stakes, earning a rating of 9 out of 10. Let me know what you thought of the 6th episode in the comments below. Remember to like the video, and subscribe for more reviews like this, and follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Thank you all for watching, and remember, the Force will be with you, always.